This will be a description of the Quickdraw weaving program's ability to give you a hand while you're actually warping and weaving on the loom. Now there's a couple of different ways to get to the loom help functions. One is from the main view menu, tools for threading, treadling, and tie-up. The other is this thing on the toolbar that looks like a loom. So if I click that, which is where I am, I've got 4 different primary help areas. One is when I'm planning a warp, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The second is when I'm actually threading the loom. The third, we'll walk back through the treadling while I'm weaving the process, and that does include Adobe interfaces. And the fourth is actually where you're setting up the tie-up. Depending upon your loom, that may be easier to do working by shaft or by treadle. So whichever of those works out well for you. Let me switch to another file here. Okay, this is a fairly large network draft, which is really why I created the loom help in the first place. Now I have gone through and added a few random colors into one of these just to create a sample so we can see what we're really trying to do. So when I ask for sectional warping, this tool allows me to allocate how many threads are in each section across the sectional beam. First input is the ends per inch or per centimeter. It doesn't matter which dimension you're using. What it really needs to know is how many threads are in section. Say I actually needed 12 threads per inch, and my loom has 2-inch sections, and I can change those numbers however I want to. Now normally the middle of my beam is where a separator is. I could also set it up so that the middle of the beam is where a section is. So that would give me an odd number of sections. This would give me an even. So as I set those parameters, it's going to calculate how many threads per beam section. And so I asked for 12 at 2 ends per, at 12 ends per inch times 2 inches. So I've got 24 ends. If I wanted to, I can also change that directly. So for example, if I do that, you'll notice it changed the EPI corresponding. So you can, whichever way works out best for you. I can also balance how many threads are on the end if I want to override the automatic calculations. And I can number how the sections will be labeled from right to left, from center out, or from left to right. Once I've set those up, the message line underneath here tells me how many ends were in the pattern. The 24 ends per section, at that it will take 10 sections, and the outside sections, instead of having 24 threads, would actually be 23 threads. So if I ask to annotate those sections, it's now actually added 10 sections. You'll notice they're labeled 1 through 10, left to right. If I'd ask for the center, for example, it's actually now got 10 sections. And if I, for example, if I did the center, now I've got a center section, and it actually takes 11 sections, and it's got a fractional 5 threads on one end and about 5 threads on the other. And if I wanted to slide that back and forth, I could just hit it there, recalculate. Now, the pattern I've entered has a fairly complex color scheme. If I zoom in, you can see in section 3 here that it's a mixture of colors. What this is telling me is I've got 3 threads on color 8, which is the purple color, 1 thread on color 7, 4 threads, 1 thread, 2 threads. So that would tell me a winding sequence. So I know if I want to have all those threads in that order to keep them straight. If you're one of those people that's a little bit looser and I just want to give me 7 black, 5 red. So the weird control tells me how I want to display, show me each individual thread, or group it together for me. So that gives me the ability, and then I can see how many sections, which threads, and that's actually added that to the pattern block. Now, once I've got that wound, and I go to the warp, now when I start over here on section 5, it's going to tell me which each time through, it will tell me which harness that particular thread needs to be threaded through, and it will show me the color. For example, if I get over here into this next block, it's starting to show me the blue threads here, so it's telling me what's going on. And it will step through that and show me thread by thread where it's threaded. If I want to go straight to a thread, if I can click on the tie-up, it will take me straight there. So once I'm threaded, I frequently use that as a way to cross-check and make sure that the threading is what it's supposed to be. So it'll siphon through those. If I hit a right mouse click, it just sequences through that. I could check and make sure that the shafts are moving. Now, when I actually get ready to go weave that, when I hit the Loom help, this was, as a network draft, it's a fairly complex lift plan I got to deal with, kind of on a table loom kind of an environment. So it's going to physically tell me from the bottom shaft, as I cycle through that, each time I hit a space bar or a key, it will give me the current treadling, show me what's going on there so I can actually see that. If I have Adobe Loom connected, it would tell Adobe what to do. It would give me a summary of what the pattern looks like as it's woven. So that gives me the overall capabilities of Loom help. Like I said, it was really intended when you have a much more complicated threading and treadling sequence. If you look at this pattern, it's a fairly complicated pattern, and trying to keep track of that by hand can be a problem. So the Loom help gives me the ability to automate that process. Thank you.